am back, and I've got a big video up for you today where I'm going to cover a lot of different things, from a couple of pay-per-view reviews, one pay-per-view preview, and largely talking about let's say interesting, is that the right word? Interesting week that the WWE has had, particularly as it pertains to their deal with Saudi Arabia and the show that they just recently had and the fallout of said show, which is definitely worth talking about. So, but before I get into all that, I do have my top 10 matches for the month of October 2019. Let me pull up my list. And let me say, I mentioned this on Twitter, and I'll repeat it here. This month might be the toughest top 10 list I've ever had to do since I've started doing these top 10 match lists on a monthly basis. Mainly because I've watched so much wrestling this month, and you've got AEW Dynamite and NXT who are just going nutso with high quality matches every single week, I feel like trying to outdo each other. And I've watched so many different products, from NWA Power to MLW to I even tried to keep up with Raw and SmackDown at least a little bit, and Impact Wrestling had Bound for Glory. MLW, I was going to say MLW had its pay-per-view, but that actually happened in November, so I'm safe there. But there was a lot of different things to pull from this month, so it was very hard to whittle it all down to 10 matches for this list. But I swore I wasn't going to cheat. I was going to get it down to 10, and I did, and here is my list. Let's go. Number 10, from Bound for Glory, Jake Crist versus Ace Austin versus Tessa Blanchard versus AC Romero versus Daga in a ladder match for the X Division Championship. I said this was my match of the night for Bound for Glory. I thought Impact put on a decent show with Bound for Glory, but this was the standout match. I thought Tessa Blanchard, once again, looked amazing in it. She's become like, if Sammy Callahan is not Impact's MVP, then it's her. And I'm more inclined to say that she's the MVP, to be honest. I think she's great. I think she's had a stellar year for them. And for a company that doesn't always get a lot of attention, I think Tessa is one of the reasons to talk about Impact. And she's one of the reasons I've stayed with them and I still watch. She's that good. She gets me to want to watch them. And I thought this match turned out really well, for a multi-man spot fest. I thought AC Romero added a lot, even though he doesn't fit the X Division mold at all. Having a big fat guy bump around and fall off a ladder was made for a fun visual and helped to set this apart from most other matches of its kind. I'm kind of glad they didn't do an Ultimate X match, because they've ridden that gimmick into the fucking ground. So doing something like this, again, not wholly original, but was fine for what it was, and I thought it was the most entertaining part of Bound for Glory. Number 9, Matt Riddle versus Cameron Grimes from the October 22nd episode of NXT. This one might surprise you, but really what I liked about this one was a very basic and simple old school setup. You had Cameron Grimes, who was coming out every week and beating people in like 5 seconds, and he was winning matches easily. And then he gets put up against Matt Riddle, and it's like, okay, Matt Riddle is like a real challenge. Let's see how he does against Matt Riddle. And obviously he doesn't beat him in 3 seconds. Matt Riddle beats him, so it's like, all right, there's an obvious separation of skill level there. Well, Cameron Grimes, he'll squash a bunch of lower level no-names, but he's not on the level of someone like a Matt Riddle or an Adam Cole or those top tier guys. Very old school, basic kind of booking. You make a guy look strong for a few weeks, then you have him go up against a star and see what happens. You either put over the new guy that's looked strong for a few weeks and you go, ooh, look at this guy. Or you have the star beat somebody of some kind of consequence because he'd won some easy matches and got some people talking for a few weeks. So very basic setup, but I thought the match was really good, and I thought everything surrounding it, again, very simple. It's not like the most intense, heated rivalry or anything, but it was a very kind of sports-like scenario. It's like, okay, let's see if Cameron Grimes is for real. Let's see if how he does against Matt Riddle. And I think that setup made this match really interesting, and I thought it was really good. So kudos. I thought it was really well booked and really well done. Number 8, Nick Aldis defending the NWA Championship against Tim Storm in Tim Storm's last chance to go for the title from the very first edition of NWA Power. Again, I came into this match not knowing a whole heck of a lot about Tim Storm, but I thought NWA, what they did on this show, they appropriately set the stage, told us who this guy was, told his story, and then they delivered this old school and emotionally charged match where I really wanted Tim Storm to win the title. So I came into the match not knowing much about him, and I came out of it hoping that he was going to win by the end of it. So they told their story correctly, and I was invested in it. And very old school basic stuff, but I like old school basic stuff. And if you like old school basic stuff, I mean, NWA Power's got you covered, because that's basically what it is. So I really enjoyed that. It was a very strong match for the first show. Number 7, Chris Jericho versus Darby Allin for the AEW World Title in a Philly Street Fight, the first AEW title match in the history of AEW Dynamite. This was from the October 16th episode. Really well done. You know, I don't think any of us honestly expected Jericho to drop the title here, but it was a nice way to elevate Darby Allin, and I think they did that effectively here. And it wasn't like a typical hardcore match, not what you would expect to see. They had a clear-cut heel in Jericho, a clear-cut babyface in Darby Allin, and they even had the babyface work a comeback with both of his hands tied behind his back. I don't think I've ever seen that before. So, you know, whenever you can do something new that I've never seen before, that means you've probably done something right. And I thought the match was exciting. I thought it was really good. I thought it elevated Darby Allin. And I thought it was a pretty solid first championship match for Dynamite. So all in all, highly entertained and good stuff all around. Number 6, the Young Bucks versus Private Party in the first round of the tag team tournament on AEW Dynamite. This was on the October 9th episode. Really exciting tag match, the type of thing you would expect out of these two teams, kind of, you know, some would say flip-floppy and that type of stuff. But I think what really set this match apart from all the other ones that they've done was the upset factor. I honestly did not expect the Young Bucks to lose in the first round of this tournament. I thought for sure, I expected SCU and Lucha Brothers to make it to the finals, because that seemed to be what they were setting up, but I at the very least expected Young Bucks to make it into the second round. They did not, and I think that huge upset really helped this match to stand out and help to put Private Party on the map and kind of get people to take notice of them. So they accomplished what they set out to do with this match. I thought it was really good, and I really liked it. Number 5, Becky Lynch defending the Raw Women's title against Sasha Banks in a Hell in a Cell match from Hell in a Cell 2019. You know, on this show, the Hell in a Cell gimmick match was completely destroyed thanks to the Seth Rollins Fiend match, which will probably go down as my pick for worst match of the year. But fortunately, they did have one good Hell in a Cell here. I thought Becky and Sasha had a really good match that had a few creative spots, specifically the one where they set up the kendo stick and the chair in the corner and did some of that funny stuff with the cage. So I thought some of the stuff they did was cool, and it was just a really well done, nice, solid match. I wish it was the only Hell in a Cell on the show, but whatever, old man yelling at the sky or whatever. But I thought it was a pretty good match. Becky got the win, and they... the most negative thing I can say about this match is that it opened up the show, and the show peaked at the first match, and everything else was just downhill from there. Because I think I disliked just about everything else on the show, and then the main event happened, and I just shat on it completely. But at least it opened strong. I will give it that. It did open strong. Number 4, Will Ospreay versus El Phantasmo for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title from New Japan's King of Pro Wrestling 2019. Very good match. You know, Will Ospreay's a guy that I think has developed quite well. I think, you know, when he first started to get noticed, a lot of people saw him as just a spot monkey. But as he's grown and developed, I've seen, it's like, no, he's added a little bit more to, a little bit more nuance to his performances. And I think he does really, really well. And this was another example of Will Ospreay being able to go out there and just having a really strong and exciting matchup. So really good stuff there. And number 3 is also from New Japan King of Pro Wrestling 2019, Minoru Suzuki versus Jushin Thunder Liger in the Battle Liger Get-Up. And this match was great. And, you know, to see two guys at the age that they are for Suzuki and Liger is close to having his retirement match. And to see them go out there and have a brawl that came off as well as this match did, and I'm going to have more to say about the age of certain guys when I talk about MLW Saturday Night Superfight, but I thought this match was really, really good. Two guys that I've been a fan of. I've been a fan of Suzuki ever since I saw Wrestle Kingdom 9, and you know, and Liger I've been a fan of since I was watching WCW as a kid. I really appreciate both men and what they're able to do at their age to go out there and have a fight as good as this one and a brawl as good as this one where you really felt like they were trying to kill each other. without doing a whole lot of high spots. It was just a convincing effort of like, oh my God, these two guys are trying to beat the crap out of each other. Very effective, really well done, great stuff. And it goes to show you, you know what? If you're in your 50s, if you can still go, and you know, I've already put over Tim Storm. I put over Jericho, who's close to 50, and I think he's doing really good work right now in AEW. And as it turns out, it's like, yeah, he was actually, you know, some people question the decision to put the belt on him over Hangman, because they're like, oh, put the young star over and see what he can do. It's like, no, I think they made the right decision to put it on Jericho. When you see what he's done so far in AEW, it's like, no, they made the right choice. So, you know, age, I guess, is just a number. It's not, I guess, how old you are, but how much mileage you have in the tank, or whatever the adage is. But you know, if you're up there and you're in your 50s, if you can still go to this level, what Liger and Suzuki were able to do at this show, who am I to say no? Like, who am I to say that they have to retire? And Liger's going to retire, and I'm looking forward to Wrestle Kingdom just to see Liger's last match. And that's going to be, I imagine that's probably, regardless of how the match itself turns out, that's probably going to be an emotional one. I could see Liger's final match. It's going to be historic, to say the least. But I thought these two tore the house down at King of Pro Wrestling, and I loved the match. I loved every second of it. And then from there, we have two matches that happened on the same night on two different shows. Number 2 is going to go to the first match in AEW Dynamite history from October 2nd, Cody versus Sammy Guevara. This is the first match in Dynamite history. I'm not counting Darby Allin versus Cena, which was the pre-show match in the first AEW Dark match. I'm not going to count that. The first one to actually air on TNT was Cody versus Sammy Guevara, and I was there in attendance for this. It was a hot way to start the show. It showcased Cody very, very well, and helped to elevate Sammy Guevara, who's a guy I didn't really think all that much of. I thought he was just another flip-floppy guy, and this match was kind of the starting point of him becoming I guess, an essential part of the Inner Circle. And I think all the guys in the Inner Circle add something to the group. You've got, you know, the former LAX guys. They're the dirty, rotten thugs that just go out there and beat up whoever they want. You've got Jake Hager, who is the muscle of the group. You've got Jericho, who's like the Ric Flair or the Triple H of the group, where he's just the centerpiece of the whole thing, the leader. And then you got Sammy Guevara, who's like the understudy, the protege. And he feels like Jericho did 20 years ago, like what they seem to be carving for him now, like the type of personality and the type of character he is now. And it's worked beautifully because, you know, when he had that match with Hangman on a recent episode of Dynamite, I was sitting there the whole time, I'm like, fuck that guy. And if you can get me to do that, you know, you're doing something right. And I thought this match was great and a very exciting way to start off the first Dynamite. But match of the month is going to go to the match that went up against it on Wednesday night. Adam Cole defending the NXT title against Matt Riddle. Some would say they hot-shotted this match. I tend to agree. They probably should have saved it for TakeOver. But as it was, I thought it was a very exciting contest of two clashing styles. Matt Riddle, I've said it before, I think the guy's money. He's one of the most unique workers out there today, and I think he's got a natural charisma to him and has a believability to him that a lot of guys don't have. I think Matt Riddle's great. You know, just don't run your mouth on Twitter. That'll get you in trouble. And Adam Cole, I think, is a good placeholder champion for right now. I think as the top guy right now, I think he's done really well for himself. And I think these two went out there and had a great match, and it was my favorite match of the month. So I guess you could say it's kind of sad that my two favorite matches of the month happened on the second day of the month, but it's how everything played out. And there were a lot of matches. I mean, if I was going to show all the runners-up, like, this list would be like probably 40 matches long, because there's been a lot of really good matches that I enjoyed this month. But Adam Cole and Matt Riddle, that gets the number one nod for me for match of the month. Now, what gets brand of the month? That's going to be an interesting one. For this month, I'm going to give it to AEW because they helped to make wrestling fun again. And, you know, NXT has put on some really good shows. AEW, not everything they've done is perfect, but I think just having them around on TNT has helped make wrestling really exciting and really fun again. And I've already talked with some friends of mine about doing old school Nitro parties, but for AEW Dynamite. And that's something, a lot of them haven't done in years, not since WCW went away. So it's nice to be enjoying wrestling again. And again, it's like, I like having NWA Power around. I like having, that I'm getting into MLW. Impact seems to have found a new spark on Access TV. So, there's some stuff to be excited about in pro wrestling. Honestly, the one company that seems dead in the water right now is Ring of Honor. And WWE, I could bash the holy hell out of them. And my review of Crown Jewel is coming, don't worry. But, they at least have some things. Like, ROH has got fucking nothing right now. And after watching the MLW pay-per-view, I'm like, okay, so MLW is basically just better Ring of Honor at this point. So I might as well just watch MLW instead of Ring of Honor. And I don't want to beat up on Ring of Honor, but it's like, they had the biggest show in company history, WrestleMania weekend in MSG, and they have done absolutely nothing with that momentum since then. And the biggest headlines they've had since then are the incident with Bully Ray and the Fan, and Joey Mercury getting released from the company, and then him exposing some of the harsher practices of that company and embarrassing them, basically. So Ring of Honor seems like dead company walking right now. And it's a shame. I don't want it to die, but, there's just nothing going on right now. And they've got some guys that I like. It's not a question of not having talents that I enjoy, but it's just, there's just no spark right now. There's no direction. There's no nothing. It just feels dead as a doornail. And again, when I look at something like MLW, which at least has some things going on and has some kind of a direction, and put on a show that was actually pretty good, and I'm going to review that show as part of this video, but I'd rather just stick with MLW. Might as well just watch that, because fuck, ROH, you're kind of you're boring as shit right now. And I didn't mean to go on an ROH rant, but it's literally the one wrestling show out there right now where I'm just like, no, I'm good. I don't need to watch it. And that's a wrestling landscape that includes Raw and SmackDown. And I'm kind of like, nah, I'm good. I don't need it. But anyway, now that I've got the top 10 matches out of the way, let's jump into Crown Jewel and all the stuff surrounding that show. And I guess I'll talk about the aftermath. In what a situation that, honest to God, scared the hell out of me. Many of the WWE talents and production crew were not held hostage. I want to make that clear, but their plane was delayed for about 24 hours, and they couldn't leave Saudi Arabia, which prevented them from making it over to SmackDown. I'll talk about that in a bit, but something clearly happened in Saudi Arabia. And there's the story going around that Vince McMahon pulled the plug on the live feed in Saudi Arabia of Crown Jewel because he was owed money. And there seems to be a few things corroborating that story, like, the $60 million magically appearing in WWE's quarterly financials and all these other things. There seems to be enough breadcrumbs there to suggest that what Meltzer's reporting is at least mostly close to the truth. I don't believe for a minute the story about a mechanical failure, because you can't convince me that it would take them 24 hours to deal with a mechanical failure on a plane. It's like, what? There's no second option. There's no contingency. It's just the plane's not working, so you have to stay here for 24 hours. I don't buy it. I don't buy that at all. And I think something happened, and Vince bitched the fuck out and left them stranded there. And the Saudi government, or whoever, pulled some kind of a power play to kind of fuck with Vince a little bit. I think that's what happened. And honestly, if I was one of those talents that got left over in Saudi Arabia, I would be super pissed. I would tell Vince, I wouldn't quit the WWE, but I would tell Vince, look, I'm pissed off. That was ridiculous. You left us in a really bad situation. And guess what? Next Saudi show you run, I'm not going. You want to run these shows in Saudi Arabia, and apparently the deal's continuing through 2027, which, oh boy, yeah, goody gumdrops. You can keep running those shows, but I will have no part in it. I'm not going over there. And, I'm not saying it's as bad as, when WCW did that show in North Korea or anything like that, but it's, when you're going to perform in a country that I don't I would not describe as having what one would call a free government, or at least not to the degree of what you would see in America anyway. And you got held there for 24 hours, I would feel pretty antsy. I would feel a little uneasy and probably scared shitless. So glad. I'm happy that everybody made it safe, made it back okay. That's great to know. I actually did not watch SmackDown that Friday. I know a lot of people tuned into SmackDown just to see what the hell they were going to do because everybody got held over. But I was so scared to death for like the talents that I was literally in front of my computer like waiting, looking for updates. Like, so I didn't even watch SmackDown because I was like, are they going to make it back okay? I just want to make sure that they make it back okay. And fortunately they did, and everything's fine in that regard, but it was a very tense situation there for a hot minute, and I was like, man, if I was one of those talents, I'd be super pissed. I would be super, super pissed. And, WWE had to kind of make chicken salad out of chicken shit by putting the NXT guys on SmackDown, which I think they were going to do anyway leading into Survivor Series. I think they just kicked the angle off, a show earlier than they were intending. I think what you saw on SmackDown, you probably would have seen most of that on Raw on Monday instead, but they just kind of had to jumpstart everything. So it's nice that they had a contingency plan. It's just it sucks that they got that the talents and the production crew got stuck in that situation. And apparently the talents are not happy. If the rumors are to be believed, they're not happy, and many of them are saying, I'm not going back there. And I'm like, yeah, I don't blame you. Like, I would feel the same way. If you can't guarantee that the plane leaves on time after the show's over, when I want to get the fuck out of there, then holy shit. Now, a lot of the top guys got out of there. Brock got the fuck out of there as quickly as possible, which may explain why the Cain Velasquez match turned out the way it did, among other things. But I guess now would be a good time to talk about Crown Jewel itself. What did I think of the show? I did not care for it. I thought it was kind of a flat show. It wasn't like astonishingly terrible like Hell in a Cell was, but it was just flat. Like there wasn't a whole lot of life to the show, and nothing on it I really cared about all that much. There was one match I enjoyed. I can honestly say I enjoyed, and everything else was just kind of either flat or just the normal type of thing I would expect to see from a standard WWE show, or just plain, or may have been like a missed opportunity or something like that. So didn't think much of the show, to be perfectly honest. But let's go over the card. I didn't see the pre-show because fuck it, the show was 3.5 hours. They were getting enough of my time. But that was where Humberto Carrillo, or however you say that, he won the Battle Royal to give himself a U.S. title shot later in the event. I missed all of that. I did see some of the 24/7 title change shenanigans that happened throughout the show. I am so goddamn sick of that title already. It's just, I don't get it, and I don't get why people like it. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I think it's dumb. I think the comedy is just unfunny, and it's annoying. And I still don't understand why any human being would even want that belt. But anyway, we opened up with Brock Lesnar versus Cain Velasquez for the WWE title, which again I believe happened because Brock just wanted to get the fuck out of Saudi Arabia as fast as possible. He defeated him in, I'm looking at the time here, 2 minutes and 10 seconds. So any chance they had of, and this was a match I was actually interested in seeing because I was like, okay, they have a history together. Let's see if they can do something with this, and maybe they can turn Cain Velasquez into like a someone on the level of a Brock or an Undertaker or a Goldberg or someone, or the Fiend, or someone with that level of undefeatability and level of invincibility. So when he gets beaten 2 minutes and 10 seconds, like, well, that's dead. I'm like, nope. The first match out, and he gets beat that quickly and that easily, and it's like, well, it's over. And I'm actually more interested in the Brock Lesnar-Rey Mysterio match because I think they've done some good stuff to build that up, and that's going to be a match at Survivor Series, which, okay, I'm cool with that. That's going to be a good match to have, and Rey has the story backing him where it's like, well, smaller guys tend to do better against Brock. He doesn't seem to do as well against smaller guys, Kofi being the exception, than he does against bigger guys that he can match power with. But the match itself, I thought, was a disaster and kind of killed Cain Velasquez as any kind of long-term attraction. there is the report that he needs knee surgery, so they couldn't work the match that they had originally planned, which begs the question, why did they go through with the match? Or why not do a double DQ and try and have Kane save some face so you can do the match at a later date? I don't know. It is what it is. They just had Brock kill him, so, any intrigue that Cain Velasquez once had, I think is pretty much gone now. So, that is that. Then we had the Tag Team Turmoil match. The OC defeating the Viking Raiders, the New Day, the Revival, the B-Team, Heavy Machinery, Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode, Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder, and the Lucha House Party. I got tired just saying this match. This match was really long and really uninteresting. It just dragged and dragged and dragged and dragged. It wasn't necessarily like a train wreck of a match. It was just a really long match that dragged. That's really all there is to say about it. That's really all there is to say. It just ate up a bunch of time, and it was just super, super long. And I'm glad the OC won. I think that was the right decision. But other than that, I found myself utterly bored with this match. Then we had what I thought was the match of the night. Mansoor, the hometown Saudi boy, defeating Cesaro. This match is one of the only matches on the show that had any kind of energy to it. And it's because Mansoor was super over with the Saudi Arabian crowd. And that kid will never be that over anywhere else in the world. But doing it here, at least it had some energy and life to it. And I think Cesaro got a really good match out of the kid. So it was just a good, exciting, athletic match. Mansoor got the win, which I imagine, if they continue to do these Saudi shows, Mansoor will continue to be undefeated in Saudi Arabia. And, I think this match was fun. It was good. It was athletic. They had a few little surprises in there. And it was just a good, solid match. Perfect for an undercard type of match, and my personal favorite match on this show. Then we had Tyson Fury defeating Braun Strowman by countout. I expected Tyson Fury to win, and the countout win was a way of, Braun saving face. But Braun Strowman, they have mismanaged him so horribly. And this is a guy, when you talk about WWE not being able to create new stars, they had it with him. He was over. He was there. They had a legitimate giant and a legitimate, monster built up and ready to take the crown and become, a huge attraction. But then they booked him into oblivion, and here we go again. He's losing to a non-wrestler, granted via countout, but I knew Tyson Fury wasn't going to lose this match because he's undefeated in boxing, and no way they're going to have his record sullied in a fake fight or anything like that, even though that sounds ridiculous. But the match itself wasn't a fiasco. It was an okay match, but it just made my eyes roll. It's poor Braun. Once again, he's got a... And granted, the count-out was a way of saving face, but it's he still lost, so whatever. Then we had a very dull match for the U.S. title. AJ Styles taking on Humberto Carrillo, the winner of the Battle Royal in the pre-show. I never once thought that AJ was going to lose this match, and he didn't. And at no point was I ever convinced that there was a possibility that he could lose. So this was just a long and boring match. How long was this? It only went 12 minutes. Jesus, it felt longer than that. It was. I didn't think the match was that interesting. And Humberto, this is the first time I've seen that kid, and he didn't really do it for me. I don't know if it's fair to judge him off of this match, and maybe I should wait till I see him in an American match before I a match in an American setting before I judge him. But as is, I just thought it was a kind of a flat title match and very little intrigue. Then we had the match that got everybody talking. Natalya defeating Lacey Evans, the first ever women's match on a Saudi Arabian WWE show. This one was very awkward because, yes, they finally let the women perform on the show, but they had to wear full black bodysuits covered from the neck down all the way to their feet, basically. And I was like, what the fuck are they wearing? And then I noticed they were wearing their t-shirts, and I was like, fuck, do they have to wear the t-shirts too? And then I realized, no, it's they're both blondes wearing black bodysuits, so if they don't wear the t-shirts, the crowd's not going to be able to tell them apart. And it's like, oh my god. So I thought it was like a little awkward. The match itself, they did the best they could with what they had, but I thought watching them wrestle in those outfits just looked really cumbersome and awkward. And it's like, oh yeah, Saudi Arabia is making great strides in promoting women. And then they held the roster for 24 hours over some dispute with Vince McMahon. It's like, yep, step forward, 2 steps back, or whatever. But yeah, whatever. This was whatever. Personally, if I were one of the women in WWE, I'd be ecstatic not having to go over there and perform, especially after what happened on right after this show. But in any case, so we had that match. Then we had Team Hogan versus Team Flair. Roman Reigns, Rusev, Ricochet. Wow, a lot of R's there. Shorty G. Good God, I hate that name. And Ali for Team Hogan, taking on Randy Orton, King Corbin, Bobby Lashley, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Drew McIntyre for Team Flair. The only thing that gave this match any kind of spark was the Lashley-Rusev stuff, because they do have, and granted, I have my issues with the storyline that they're doing, but at least it's like, there's a personal issue there that gave this match a little bit of an extra flavor that it wouldn't have had otherwise. Everything else, it just felt like any other tag match you would see in the WWE, like any standard WWE show. It wasn't anything special, nothing to go out of your way to see. It's the same type of match you've probably seen a million times, with only the Rusev-Lashley stuff to give it any kind of juice. Hogan and Flair's involvement was so minimal, it's like, why are they even there? Well, for name value. That's literally the only reason they're there, for some kind of name value and get people to watch the show, but... Team Hogan got the win, continuing the trend of Hogan beating Ric Flair. Although, if I may correct Hulk Hogan, he said that Flair has never beaten him. That's not true. He did beat him for the WCW title in 1999, and he also beat him on an edition of Clash of the Champions in their rematch in 1994. Granted, that match was by countout, but Flair did win that match. So he has beaten Hogan in the past. And then we had the main event, The Fiend Bray Wyatt defeating Seth Rollins for the Universal title. Shame they didn't do that at Hell in a Cell. We could have been spared, the worst match ever. But, so yeah, I think The Fiend winning the belt is obviously the right decision. Seth has been tanking as top face, and everyone's just turned on him. So, making this move was a good idea. But if all The Fiend's matches are going to be with this red lighting, I'm going to get sick of it really, really quickly because, I hated this match because of the red lighting and the overbooking with him getting stopped like 19 times and still getting up. It's like, all right, this has become a farce. Once again, there's booking someone strong and then there's just like being a goddamn farce, and they were totally into farce territory. But with the red lighting, it makes the match hard to see. And honestly, for you kind of old school 90s gamers out there, it kind of reminded me of looking into a Virtual Boy. It looks like I'm watching The Fiend's matches on the Virtual Boy, and that's not a good thing. Just red and black and dark and awful. That's what it looks like. And please stop doing it. It's not working. It takes away from The Fiend's matches. It does nothing. And it's cumbersome on the viewer. So he doesn't need the red lighting. I think it's stupid, and it's creating more problems than it needs to. So yeah, hated the match, liked the result. So there's that. So at least we got The Fiend as a Universal Champion. Hopefully they can fix something. I thought maybe they would do The Fiend versus Brock Lesnar to determine a true champion, but instead they just moved Brock to Raw, and with that, what they did on SmackDown this week, and The Fiend is on SmackDown. So it's like, all right, so they've essentially switched the two titles. And that's all well and good. So that's Crown Jewel. Not the best show. I guess it wasn't the disasters that some of the past Saudi shows have been. I only watched the first one, but apparently the other two that they've done were awful. I didn't think the show was awful. I just thought it was kind of lifeless and dull, and I was bored most of the time. But I guess now would be a good time to talk about what they did on SmackDown this week and how they followed it up on Raw. We got the NXT invasion of both Raw and SmackDown to lead into Survivor Series, which created a better than usual episode of SmackDown, where essentially every segment was WWE guy comes out, says something, or comes out for a match, and then NXT guy comes out and beats him up. And that was basically the whole show. But you got some good stuff out of it, like the Daniel Bryan Adam Cole match, and Shayna Baszler beating up most of the SmackDown women's division, and things like that. So it was a better than usual episode of SmackDown, and NXT added a lot to that. And hey, with them on Raw and SmackDown for the next couple of weeks, maybe it'll give them some additional exposure and more people will be inclined to tune into NXT on Wednesdays. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. My problem with doing the inter-brand thing for Survivor Series and the brand supremacy angle is once Survivor Series happens, it's not going to matter. They're just going to go right back to business as usual, so it's not going to have any kind of long-term, unless they book some kind of stipulation into it where the winning brand gets something out of it. It's going to be forgotten about, unless NXT wins it, I guess. It's going to be forgotten about immediately once Survivor Series is over. It's also weird to me that that the individual storylines kind of get put on hold while this interbrand stuff happens. For example, on NXT, you've got everybody going after the Undisputed Era because they're a bunch of jackasses, and you've got Matt Riddle that hates him, hates Adam Cole, wants to take the title from him. On SmackDown, they're standing in the ring together like they're buddies because they're on the NXT side. Shayna Baszler, her whole group is going to be put into a War Games match, yet she's standing in the ring with all the NXT women that she's going to be competing in War Games against. And that type of stuff kind of bothers me, where it's like, all right, which means more, the individual stories or the overall brand story? And why are these guys all working together? Because Triple H told them to. And that type of stuff always bugs me. And actually, I'm watching the older Nitros, and I'm at the tail end of 95. And in those episodes, they're doing the inter-promotional deal between New Japan and WCW. And that one has the opposite problem, where you have all these individual storylines going on, and the brand war feels unimportant. It feels like something that they're doing to sell Starrcade. And but they're still hyping all the individual stories with Hogan and the Horsemen and Savage and Luger and Sting and all the other stuff going on. So that's all more important than whatever the hell's going on with the Japanese guys. So they're doing the whole keeping all the individual stories intact, but nobody really cares about the brand war thing. And here, WWE's like, all right, let's sacrifice most of the individual stories, at least on the NXT side of things, and focus on the brand war. So it's like, pick your poison. I guess you're doing something negative either way. But for Survivor Series, we already have lined up 2 triple threat matches, the Viking Raiders, the Revival, and the Undisputed Era. Battle of all the tag team champions of the 3 brands. And I'll be honest, that match could be match of the night if they're allowed to steal the show. I love the Revival. Undisputed Era has done really well in NXT, and I think those 2 teams could work well together. And the Viking Raiders are a great big ol' Haas team. And I like big ol' Haas teams. And I think all 3 teams bring something different to the table. Red Dragon, obviously, their reputation precedes them. So I think that could be the show stealer if it's allowed to be. Then we have all the women's champions going at it. Becky Lynch versus Bayley versus Shayna Baszler. That should be an interesting one. I think Shayna provides a nice, interesting little X factor for Becky Lynch. And also, it's nice to see Shayna get some interesting new competition because she kind of destroyed the whole women's division on NXT, and now they're having to build up a bunch of different challengers to come and face her. But so I think that's a fresh and interesting match. And we also have Brock Lesnar versus Rey Mysterio for the WWE title, which is not part of the brand war thing. So, but that's been built up pretty well. I'm actually interested in seeing that match. So, got some stuff to look forward to in Survivor Series. And we'll see. I'm very interested to see how they play this up on NXT. Maybe we'll get a Raw and SmackDown invasion on NXT. Who knows? But, how far are they willing to... Because they're still building up War Games in the meantime. So, NXT is going to have to work doubly hard to continue to sell Survivor Series, but also keep all their individual stories in place while they sell War Games. But we'll see how that all plays out. So that concludes the WWE talk. Now I want to go into a show that I watched this weekend. MLW Saturday Night Superfight, my first MLW pay-per-view, their first pay-per-view, and the first major MLW event I've ever watched. I've just started watching their weekly fusion shows on YouTube. And I've been getting familiar with the product and kind of like, okay, I'm kind of liking this. I'm still trying to get a feel for everybody that's on the show and all the stories going in. Love the Dynasty. I put them over a lot on Twitter, but other than that, I'm still just trying to feel my way through and trying to understand where everybody's coming from. And after this show, I'm kind of sold on MLW. I thought it was a pretty good show overall. Really good stuff. And what they did really well was provide so many different styles of wrestling. You had a knockdown, drag out, like kind of, fight in the main event with a big fight feel. You had like cruiserweight style action. You had tag teams. You had hardcore match. You had like a power match for the open weight title. You had all these different things going. You had a grappler match, like a traditional old school dirty grappler match. So they presented a lot of different styles throughout the show, and I thought that helped provide variety and excitement. And overall, I thought it was a very entertaining show, and I really liked it. Didn't see the pre-show. I didn't really have time, so I kind of skipped over that. It is weird to see Simon Gotch as like a thug in a heel group rather than a vaudevillian, but good for him that he's found something to do. We opened up the main show with the Von Erichs, Marshall and Ross, taking on MJF, my boy, and Richard Holiday of the Dynasty for the MLW Tag Team Championships in a Texas Tornado match. Perfect for the Von Erichs. And I thought this was a fun match. I thought it could have gone a little longer. I thought MJF kept doing this thing where he was mocking the Iron Claw. So I thought, okay, they're going to lock him in the Iron Claw. It's going to be the huge, like, big comeuppance moment for the heel. And then they did it, and it just kind of felt like, it just kind of felt like another spot in the match. It didn't have the payoff to it that I was hoping for. But overall, you got some solid tag team action here. You had the heels isolating one face and beating him over. It's a no tag format in Texas Tornado rules, so they were able to do that. And overall, it was a fun, solid match to kick off the show, and you had the faces overcoming the heels, so good way to kick things off overall. Next, you had the trios match, members of Injustice, Jordan Oliver, Cotto Brazil, and Myron Reed, defeating Gringo Loco, Puma King, and Septimo Dragon. This was exactly what you would expect out of this type of match. High-flying, flip-floppy, car wreck kind of match. I like Injustice. I like their look, and I like their overall presentation. But overall, it's a spot festy match. It's fun for that. If you don't like those type of matches, you're not going to like this match. It's one of those type of deals. But if you do enjoy that type of stuff, it's fun for what it is. And I would never say a match like this is match of the night. If it is, that's a pretty sad state for the card. But as a filler match on the show, I thought it was perfectly solid for what it was and what it provided. Next up, we had a match that really took me by surprise. For the middleweight championship, Teddy Hart defeating and successfully defending the title against Austin Aries. Now, if you'd asked 2004 me what I thought of Teddy Hart and Austin Aries, I would have told you I thought Austin Aries was bland as hell, and Teddy Hart is a crazy person, entitled little wacko, and nothing more than a spot monkey as far as his in-ring work goes. They went out here and had almost had the best match on the show. I'll tell you which match I actually enjoyed the most. But I thought Teddy Hart and Austin Aries had a hell of a match. Again, they did the injury angle with Austin Aries hurting Teddy Hart's neck. I cannot believe that Teddy Hart actually is getting another run in 2018, 2019. That's just incredible to me because I thought he was just long gone and done. And I didn't think he was going to amount to much. But anyway, he's got this run in MLW, and he appears to be doing quite well for himself, so good on him. But they worked a very old-school style match where the heel worked over the injury. You knew who the heel was, and you wanted to see the babyface make a comeback and beat him, and he did. And I was like, okay, good old-school wrestling. And I would never expect that out of these two because they're so... anybody who saw them in the mid-2000s, you don't expect emotion out of them. You expect indie-style wrestling out of them. And Austin Aries is one of those guys that's convinced of his own greatness to such a degree that I think it's been a detriment to his career. Look at what he did in the main event of Bound for Glory last year, that type of stuff. But I think this match showed, when both guys have put their minds to it and they're motivated, and they've got some good material, they can put on a really good match that tells a really good story. And I went into this match kind of morbidly curious, and I came out of it like rooting for Teddy Hart and booing Austin Aries. So again, the match accomplished exactly what it set out to do. The Canadian Destroyer that Teddy hit at the end wasn't the cleanest and probably could have been better, but as is, I thought the match went very, very well, and I thought it was one of the standout matches on the show. Then we had what was basically a squash match, Low Ki defeating Brian Pillman Jr. Low Ki has been squashing people, and they made a point of this on the pay-per-view. He's been squashing people in under 3 minutes, and Brian Pillman lasted longer than anybody. Brian Pillman Jr., who, by the way, wore his dad's old Hollywood Blondes jacket to the ring, so that was a nice touch. I think Brian Pillman Jr. has some potential. He's still a little green, still a little raw, but I think there's some potential there, and I like his look. But anyway, Low Ki had been squashing people in under 3 minutes, and here he basically dominated Brian Pillman Jr., but Brian Pillman lasted longer than than everyone else has. He lasted like 7 or 8 minutes. So even though he took the loss here, and it was a somewhat dominant win for Low Ki, Brian Pillman gets to look somewhat good in defeat by lasting as long in there. And Brian Pillman learned a lesson in respect after disrespecting Low Ki. And Low Ki, who's another guy like Austin Aries, who's convinced of his own greatness and seems to get in his own way when it comes to his career, seems to have hopefully found a nice stable footing in MLW, and hopefully he's not shooting himself in the foot anymore. But anyway, both of them found mutual respect for each other with the way this was booked. I thought it was okay for what it was. It wasn't any kind of a standout match, but hopefully it's a nice stepping stone for Brian Pillman to eventually evolve into something better. Because again, I think he's got potential, but he's still a little raw. Then we had Tom Lawler versus Timothy Thatcher. I'll be honest, this one took a while to get going for me. Like, it took a few minutes for me to accept what they were doing. It was a very old school grappler kind of match. And the early portion, they were basically just trading holds. But as it developed and it got more intense, I started to really dig what they were doing. And again, old school grappler kind of stuff, some hard hitting where they were knocking the dog crap out of each other. Very old school kind of NWA type of feel to it. And I think it started off first 3 to 4 minutes, maybe I was a little bored with it. By the end, I was really excited by it. It came across like a real fight. And Tom Lawler got the win, and I thought the match turned out really, really well. I was happy with it. And if you like this type of wrestling, this is right up your alley. It's just good old dirty, roughneck kind of grappling. It was really good. It kind of reminded me of, to use a WWE example, it kind of reminded me of Greg Valentine versus Ronnie Garvin from Royal Rumble 1990, for those of you who remember that match, which was a submission match, but it kind of had like this hard-hitting kind of grappler style to it that most WWE matches, especially back then, didn't have. So it stood out among the norm. And this match kind of had that feel to it too. So good stuff. Then we had the hardcore match, the Stairway to Hell, Mance Warner defeating Jimmy Havoc and Bestia 666. This was, again, much like what I said about the trios match. If you don't like hardcore matches, this isn't for you. If you like hardcore matches, this is right up your alley, because they went out there and just beat the shit out of each other. It was bloody. It was gory. It was everything you expect out of a hardcore match. They did the staple gun spot, which I hate that spot, because it's like, dude, there's either the staple gun's not full and it's fake as hell, or there's really staples in there, and Jesus Christ, are you insane? That's like, don't do that, you fucking crazy people. But anyway, I thought the match was enjoyable. I thought it was fun. It was nice, bloody, violent type of stuff that you would expect out of a match like this. Mance Warner, who I'd never really seen before, looks like a legitimate crazy person, and I think fits the character really well. It was a good match. It was just a good, solid, garbagey, hardcore wrestling match, and I was fine with it. Next up was the one disappointment on the show. Alexander Hammerstone successfully retaining the MLW National Openweight title against Davey Boy Smith Jr. I was kind of hoping for this to be like a traditional power match, and it was in a way, but it was also very awkward in points. Where, like, for example, Davey Boy just hulked up and did the whole Hulk Hogan bit in the middle of the match for no reason. And it was like, okay, that was weird, and there was no build up to that. And there's also the storyline there with Hammerstone like hitting on Davey Boy's sister, but she played no factor into the outcome of the match at all. She didn't even come out. So, all right, what's the point of having that story if it's not going to play a factor into the outcome of the match at all? And just a few other awkward bits like that. The finish was a little flat, and parts of it were a little clunky. And I like both guys. I like Hammerstone. I like Davey Boy. But this match, I don't know, they didn't gel as well as I were hoping for. I was hoping for a match to use Davey Boy's father as an example. I was kind of hoping for a match like Davey Boy versus the Warlord at WrestleMania 7, which that was a real good, like, kind of knockdown, drag-out kind of match. Or something like Hercules versus Haku at WrestleMania 5. Like, something like that. Just two powerhouses just throwing each other around and knocking the dog crap out of each other. I was kind of like that old school 80s style of doing that. I was kind of hoping for something like that, but that's not what we got. It was kind of a failed attempt at that, if anything else, with a couple of awkward moments thrown in that didn't really work. But they can't all be winners, I guess. But next up is the main event. Jacob Fatu successfully retaining the MLW World Title against LA Park in a no disqualifications match. This was LA Park's like cash-in match, the golden ticket cash-in. Selena De La Renta, or what's her name? Selena De La Renta, who's the valet for LA Park and various other wrestlers in MLW. She is super, super hot. Just throwing that out there. Makes a great valet. The Contra Group's manager, Joseph Samayam, I think his name is. He's really good too. So it's nice to see the managers like playing a role in this type of stuff and having fun with that as well. But I'll be honest, LA Park, I didn't expect much out of him given his age. The chairman of WCW can still go. Like, it's not like a cruiserweight style like he used to do. It's more of a heavyweight style, but they had a nice knockdown, drag-out fight that had a big fight feel to it. Like, the crowd was buzzing for this match. It was like, you really felt like this was the match that they were all excited to see. And, it was violent. It was a brawl. They did some cool, like, high-flying moves at some points. It was a very cool match, and I was really, it caught me by surprise at how much I enjoyed this match. And again, going back to what I said earlier about the Tim Storms and the Suzukis and the Ligers and those type of guys, it's like, LA Park, in his 50s, still having a match like that. Who am I to say that he has to retire, if you can still go and have a match like that, you can go as long as you want, as far as I'm concerned. So I was thoroughly surprised and thoroughly impressed with this match. I thought it was the highlight of the show, and it was the last match on the show, so it's good to go out on the highest note. And Fatu got the win, which I thought was the right move. It's the first time I'd ever really seen him, and I was like, this guy's pretty good. Guy's pretty good. I'm just curious, how old is LA Park? According to Wikipedia, he is 53 years old. Man, that's crazy. But, if you're looking for a kind of a sleeper hit match to watch, check out the main event of MLW Saturday Night Superfight. It was a real good match. Actually, this whole show was really good. I thought overall, top to bottom, it was a thoroughly entertaining show, and I was really happy with it. Worth the $20 I spent on it. And, if you're looking for different options out there, MLW might be worth a look. Just saying. We'll see how they follow up on Fusion and whether or not I continue to watch MLW. But for right now, I'm kind of digging what I'm seeing, so good on them. Good stuff. All right, so I think we're about wrapped up here. I've gone almost an hour. But before I go, I do want to give a quick preview for AEW Full Gear, which is going to be in Baltimore, Maryland, and I cannot attend it due to personal reasons. I can't attend it. Don't want to say why, but I can't attend the show, unfortunately. But I am going to get to see it, and that's the important thing. As long as I see the show and pay for it on pay-per-view, I'll be happy. So we've got the 4 main matches lined up, and it looks like we have a match lined up for the pre-show, B. Priestley versus Britt Baker, which is the one women's feud that they really have going right now. Still need to work on the women's division, but I guess baby steps. But the 4 main matches, I'm kind of like, that's enough to get me sold on the show. Hopefully on this week's Dynamite, they fill out the card even more. But right now, I'm looking, all right, we've got Adam Page versus Pac. I think that could be a really good match. Young Bucks versus Santana and Ortiz. They've been building that up pretty much since the first episode. I think that's going to be a really intense tag match. I'm glad that the titles aren't involved. It's good to have feuds outside of what's going on for the title. A good way to kill a division is to have it so that every match is for the title. That'll kill it. You've got to have like some kind of level of competition within the division. And I think situations like this are a good way to do that. And I think the Bucks and Santana Ortiz are going to have a really good tag team match. And then you have like the double main event. Chris Jericho defending the AEW World title against Cody. I think everything that they've done to set up this match, the contract signing segment and the much talked about VIP lounge box attack that they did that one week were both very well received, very good segments, and I'm really excited to see this match. I think it could be very good. I think Jericho wins the title or retains the title. Some people have said this, and I think it might happen. I think Hangman Page is probably going to turn heel. We're expecting MJF to turn on Cody, and I don't want that to happen right now because I think that they could milk that friendship for years. But a good way to do a twist on that is, all right, have Hangman turn on him. Have Hangman be the one to break away from the Elite and go with the new group and give Hangman a little bit more bite. We'll see how that goes. And you can do Cody versus Hangman for the future and have that match to look forward to. So, yeah, I say Jericho keeps the title for now. And Cody will probably get screwed over by Hangman. Well, we'll see how that goes. And then we have what I think is probably by default going to be the main event because it's a non-sanctioned lights out match. Jon Moxley versus Kenny Omega. Now, the interactions that these two have had on TV, and going all the way back to Moxley's debut at Double or Nothing, and the promo that Moxley cut on Dynamite last week, I'm looking at this match as like, I don't see how they don't tear the house down. Like this, they seem to have the chemistry. And again, you can't really tell that what the in-ring chemistry is going to be like just by stare downs and fights, but they seem to have a spark there. There seems to be a lot of intrigue, and I think maybe it was fortuitous that the match didn't happen at All Out because now people have had to wait even longer for it. And I think people are more excited for it as a result. And I think they're going to tear the house down at Full Gear. I don't know who's going to win, especially now that it's like, oh, it's a non-sanctioned match, so the win doesn't count. That kind of removes that whole discussion out of it. It's like, all right, so who goes over, Moxley or Omega? I'm going to say Omega goes over, and then Moxley continues his I'm pissed off at AEW management thing. But then again, they could just have Moxley win and still be pissed off that the win doesn't count. So who knows? Like, I don't know. Like, I could see it going either way. But either way, I think this match is going to be amazing, and I think they have potential to have like a really, really strong match here. And so, yeah, I mean, that's only 4 matches, 5 if you count the pre-show match. But I think that that's a really strong core of matches to have, and hopefully they fill it out nicely on Dynamite this week. I don't think they need to have a tag team title match because they've just done the tournament. SCU won the tag titles, and I think you could get some mileage out of building to a rematch rather than just rushing into the next pay-per-view. I would do like some kind of a contenders match or something, or even do like a tag team gauntlet match. Why not? Just do something like that. No need to rush a tag title match on the show just for the sake of having one. And I have absolutely no idea what they're going to do with the women's title because, again, it's kind of a directionless division. They just kind of do matches. And they've got some talent there. They've got some solid female talent there. It's just they need to find a direction, and they haven't quite found that yet. But in any case, I'm excited for Full Gear, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. The double main event in particular, I think, is really strong. But that concludes this video. I went longer than I intended to, but hey, like I said, I had a lot to cover, so that is that. But thank you once again, everybody, for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment down below. The support is appreciated, and be sure to hit the little bell icon so you get notified whenever I do post a video. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everyone, for watching, and I will see you all later.